What if Julius Caesar survived the Ides of March? Close your eyes and step into a marble hall glittering with torches. The air is sweet with laurel smoke. Senators shift like shadows. A knife flashes, then slips. A cloak rips. Caesar reels, but he does not fall. Guards crash through the doors. Steel sings. The floor that should have run red with Rome's future is suddenly slick with fear. In that breath, history misses the blade by an inch. And the world, our world, tilts. Let's start with what really happened. March 15th, 44 BCE. A circle of aristocrats, Brutus, Cassius, and others, stabbed Julius Caesar to death, believing they were saving the Republic. They weren't. The assassination detonated the Republic they claimed to protect. Rome plunged into civil wars. Alliances broke, armies turned, and streets ran with names. Antony, Octavian, Lepidus. Out of that chaos rose Caesar's adopted heir, Octavian. Augustus, the first emperor. The Republic ended, the empire began, and a new order, legal, social, and spiritual, took root under his careful, cold hand. Now, reset the stage. The conspirators strike, but Caesar lives. He is wounded, yes. Angry, absolutely. But he breathes. Immediately, the illusion of the old republic evaporates. The Senate's mask drops. Caesar had already collected titles like thunderheads, dictator for life, Pontifex Maximus, architect of calendars and colonies. He'd planned a campaign against Parthia, the Eastern Empire that humiliated Crassus at Carrhae. He'd promised land to veterans, citizenship to allies, and a new legal order to bind a sprawling world. His survival accelerates everything. First, politics. If Caesar survives, the conspirators don't. Some flee. Most don't make it past the forum. Confiscations, trials, exiles, swift and theatrical. Caesar doesn't bother pretending to restore the Republic. He choreographs a monarchy without the name. He expands the Senate with loyal provincials. He splits governorships away from corrupt aristocrats. He formalizes the imperial bureaucracy, something his heir would have done, but in a colder, more meticulous way. With Caesar, it's warmer, more pragmatic, more personal. He believes in momentum, roads, laws, cities, debt relief, spectacle, bread, and dignity. Now Cleopatra enters the frame. She is not just a lover or a scandal. She is a sovereign calculus. Cleopatra is knowledge, Alexandria's libraries and mathematicians, skilled administrators, naval power, grain. She is also a political test. How Eastern can Rome become without breaking? In our timeline, Augustus severed that question with a sword, defeating Antony and Cleopatra, annexing Egypt, and scrubbing away the idea of a Greco-Egyptian royal fusion. If Caesar lives, he doesn't need to fear Cleopatra as a rival court. He needs her as a hinge. So what does he do? He keeps Egypt independent, but bound tight. A sovereign ally, not a Roman province. He extracts long-term grain guarantees, naval basing rights, and a dynasty bound to his own. He never publicly calls Caesarion, Cleopatra's son, his legitimate heir, because he understands Rome's limits. He adopts Octavian to anchor the Roman nobility and, quietly, leaves the eastern horizon to Cleopatra and her boy. The message is elegant. Rome rules the West. Rome's closest friend rules the Nile. The Mediterranean becomes a duet instead of a monologue. Then the drums beat east. The Parthian campaign. Historically, Augustus avoided the full invasion. Trajan tried later, took cities, then fell back. Caesar would not be cautious. He'd assemble legions along the Danube and in Syria, fix secure supply lines and strike in spring. Swift, theatrical, overwhelming. He'd make an example of Armenia's frontier, place client kings, and push toward Ctesiphon, the Parthian capital on the Tigris. Could he hold Mesopotamia? Not easily, but he doesn't need to. He needs the theater of victory, hostages, standards returned, a string of client states that turn Parthia into a buffer moat. Imagine Caesar parading captured Parthian banners through Rome, restoring the shame of Carrhae with a smile and a show. He would come home more than a man. He would be a living legitimacy. This shapes the next decade. Caesar creates the Julian settlement, an unspoken constitution. The towns of Gaul are pumped with Roman veterans. Provincial elites gain real pathways to power. Latin spreads as a language of status, while Greek remains the language of scholarship. Tax systems are rationalized. Corruption, if not erased, is at least predictable. The calendar clicks into place across markets and temples. If Augustus gave the world a quiet legal machine, Caesar gives it an engine that purrs loudly and loves applause. What about Germany? Caesar had blood in the Rhine. He knew those forests. Augustus later inherited a disaster there, Teutoburg Forest, 9 CE, when 3 legions vanished into mud and trees. With Caesar alive and victorious in the east, he can afford method in the north. He won't charge blindly past the Rhine. He'll build roads, forge client tribes, settle veterans on the safer edges, and test the Elbe slowly with fortified market towns. If the empire ever reaches the Elbe, it won't be by accident. It will be by treaty, trade, and a careful choreography of loyalty and intimidation. The result? A Germanic world knitted earlier to Rome, half Roman, half wild, a shock absorber that softens the migrations to come. And culture? Here, the butterfly's wings beat hardest. Augustus crafted an image, stern morality laws, a golden age of poets praising order and piety. Caesar is different. He's a populist aristocrat, a lover of spectacle, a patron who enjoys brilliance even when it's unruly. Under Caesar's long shadow, art is splashier, less moralizing, more cosmopolitan. Picture Virgil reimagining not a destiny of pious Rome, but a tangle of origins. Aeneas, yes, but also Cleopatra's East, silk shadows, incense, seas that bind rather than divide. Picture Ovid thriving, not exiled. Picture philosophers in the Forum speaking Greek to crowds who cheer in Latin. Then Alexandria. With Egypt allied, the museum isn't a quiet rival, it's a partner. Astronomers and engineers shuttle between Rome and the Nile. The empire's scholars standardize measurements, surveyors nail down provincial maps. Shipping schedules tighten with predictable winds and new lighthouses. Medicine benefits from earlier systematic exchange, more anatomy schools, more practical manuals for army medics. Imagine engineers in Rome building siphons and pressure pumps with Alexandrian refinements, spreading clean water to new colonies, reducing disease in crowded towns by a margin that matters. Trade surges. With Parthia checked and Mesopotamian client states in play, the Silk Road gets smoother. Caravans face fewer bribes and fewer betrayals. Roman coins flow east, spices, silks, and ideas flow west. Bilingual merchants create a class that thinks continentally, and beyond the horizon, a tantalizing possibility. Direct maritime contact with India expands faster. The monsoon routes that Roman captains would later master arrive earlier. Pepper becomes common, then expected, then woven into the way provinces imagine Roman food. Religion, too, begins to crystallize differently. The imperial cult, honoring rulers with godlike status, would have grown under Augustus as a careful bridge between politics and reverence. Under Caesar, alive and triumphant, it blooms faster. Temples arise not just to the genius of the state, but to the living embodiment of safety and victory. It's not just alchemy of power, it's comfort. You can see the man who keeps the wolves from the gates. In the East, where god-kings are normal, this feels natural. In the West, it feels theatrical but irresistible. What does that mean for Christianity, decades later? Jesus still lives and preaches within a Roman system that values order and taxes, not metaphysics and mercy. His message of a kingdom not of this world still clashes with empire's logic, but the path of the faith across the empire shifts. A more syncretic, East-friendly imperial culture, infused with the glamour of Alexandria and a living imperial cult, creates both friction and opportunity. The church might grow later, or differently, as it carves space in a world more comfortable blending gods and rulers. Persecutions still occur, tied to local anxiety, not grand design. But when imperial conversion comes centuries later, it might carry a heavier Alexandrian accent, more Greek theology in the foundations, more philosophical argument baked into liturgy. And if the empire's Eastern orientation is stronger earlier, Then the eventual divide between Latin West and Greek East starts softer, and perhaps the later schism cracks along different lines, or comes later altogether. All right, the question many will ask. Succession. Does Caesar live long enough to fix the one problem no strong man can conquer? Time. He is 55 and 44 BCE. Give him a decade or more and he must name an heir. He has options. Antony is magnetic but undisciplined. Octavian is gray steel in a boy's body, calculating, patient. Caesarion is the dream of a world fused by blood and sea, but a danger in Roman eyes. The smart path? Caesar keeps Octavian as Roman heir and Caesarion as Egyptian king. He stages a marriage alliance to bind their lines, or a pact that knots the Nile to the Tiber. He makes Antony governor of a rich but bounded province, where charisma burns but does not ignite a civil war. If he pulls this off, Rome gets a dynasty without the bloodbath. The first transition, Caesar to Octavian, happens with tears and applause, not prescriptions and purges. Octavian, trained not in chaos but in administration, grows into an emperor with fewer ghosts. He inherits an empire more bilingual, more networked, more at peace with its eastern mirror. He is still Augustus, but he's an Augustus who never needed to erase Antony and Cleopatra from memory to justify himself. His propaganda softens. His laws target corruption more than morality. His map looks similar, but his margins feel thicker, stitched earlier with roads, market towns, and veterans who speak two languages at home. Quick pause. If Caesar had recognized Caesarion as a political heir in any form, would Rome have accepted an Egyptian-linked dynasty or burned? Drop your take in the comments. And if alternate timelines like this light up your brain, hit subscribe and stick with us for the next deep dive. Back to the long arc. A Rome that leans east a little sooner doesn't abandon the west. Gaul stays Roman, Iberia booms, Britain still tempts. Caesar himself never fully conquered Britain. He landed, tested, withdrew. Under a stable early principate, the island becomes a careful project. A fortress coast first, then a mineral engine, then a proving ground for governors to learn how to be emperors. The difference is the timeline. Less hurry, more infrastructure, fewer grandstanding disasters. And those Germanic frontiers, our earlier shock absorber, matter in centuries to come. Romanized pockets east of the Rhine and toward the Elbe produce leaders who can wear a toga and a wolf pelt without contradiction. When crisis hits, the 3rd century storms of usurpers, plagues, and currency collapse, the frontier doesn't crack as a single line. It flexes region by region, with client kings who owe real favors to a system their fathers profited from. The great migrations that once hammered the West might be gentler pulses. The Western Empire still faces entropy, bureaucratic bloat, succession fights, the math of maintaining too much with too little. But the fall slows. Instead of a sudden implosion in the 5th century, we get a long exhale. Regions peel away, some return. New hybrid kingdoms remain tidally bound to Rome's laws and roads. Language and law leave their fingerprints on everything. Latin stays the language of courts and contracts from the Atlantic to the Tigris, but Greek enjoys higher status in Rome itself, spoken by senators without embarrassment, taught to children of veterans, heard in markets alongside Iberian dialects and Gaulish echoes. Legal reforms arrive earlier in the provinces. Standardized contracts reduce local abuses that once sparked revolts. An imperial census that includes more people with something to lose and something to gain creates a social glue stronger than fear. Economically, the East-West duet turns the Mediterranean into a grid of predictable wealth. Grain flows from Egypt and Africa. Tin from Britain and silver from Spain feed industries that now specialize earlier. Textiles in Syria, glass in Alexandria, military equipment in the Po Valley. Each region finds its comparative advantage inside a giant safety net. With Parthia weakened and later Sasanian power counterbalanced by stable client kings, the Silk Road routes stay open longer. Ideas ride those caravans. Paper-making whispers sooner. Mathematics reaches Roman schools with fewer detours, and navigational techniques hop faster to Roman shipyards. Not a technological revolution overnight, but more lighted windows in more provincial towns. Culturally, the empire's self-image tilts. Instead of Rome imagining itself as the chastened parent correcting the East's decadence, it embraces a composite identity. Roman amphitheaters host Greek tragedies revised with Egyptian stagecraft. Festivals blend Olympian myth with civic parades that honor living rulers who, important, know that adoration is a public service, not a private right. When the empire has to be hard, it is hard, but when it can be soft, it performs its softness with skill. That reduces the frequency of rebellions that would have burned whole provinces into bitterness. Now, what about the wider world beyond Persia? The Caucasus becomes a hinge of kingdoms playing grand chess with two empires that are no longer strangers. In Arabia, trade towns like Petra fatten earlier, balancing between Roman protection and local autonomy. Across the Indian Ocean, ports on the Malabar coast, Muziris, later Kolikod, see more Roman buyers, more contracts that lock prices in winter for pepper delivered in summer. Coins pile up inland, and with them, the habit of Roman weights and measures. The feedback loop hums. More trade funds, more roads. More roads create safer trade. Even in harsh years, the machine shakes, but does not stall. None of this makes Rome immortal. Earthquakes still crack walls. Bad emperors still exist, men who mistake applause for virtue. Plagues still roll through tight-knit cities, but when the crisis of the 3rd century arrives, a carousel of emperors, external pressures, inflation, the empire has an older habit of decentralization anchored in real loyalty. The earlier partnership with Alexandria and a long tradition of Eastern client states give future emperors a playbook that isn't just punishment and prayer. They can federalize provinces temporarily, let local kings shoulder defense, and pull them back in with honors instead of chains. The tetrarchy might still emerge in some form, but it's less panic, more policy. Fast forward to the 4th century. Christianity's status is no longer a sudden imperial pivot, but the outcome of centuries of argument inside a bilingual empire. Councils happen sooner in some places, later in others, and the map of orthodoxy and heresy scribbles differently. When a Constantine-like figure finally welds church and state, the weld is made onto a structure already comfortable with ceremonial fusion. The result is not necessarily more tolerant, but more practiced at balancing many kinds of sacred under one roof. The great split between Rome and Constantinople, a tectonic break in our world, might not disappear, but its fault line is less brittle. The empire's capitals feel like mirrors, not rivals. If this all feels grand, come back to the smallest hinge, a knife that misses by a breath. From that breath flowed a different kind of legitimacy, not the stern efficiency of Augustus, but the dazzling pragmatism of Caesar. One made the empire durable, the other might have made it adaptable. Durability can crack. Adaptability survives by bending. So, would it be a better world? For the average citizen in a frontier town, say, a veteran's daughter in a new colony along the Danube, the answer might be yes. Safer roads, more predictable taxes, a market where your father's Latin and your mother's Greek both buy bread. For a poet in Rome, more patrons, fewer rules. For a senator who thought the Republic could be rescued with a dagger, a colder calculation. The Republic is memory, the empire is normal. For a shopkeeper in Judea, a fisherman in Egypt, a caravan driver in Syria, the empire remains what it always was. An argument that the benefits of peace outweigh the cost of obedience. In this timeline, the argument is made with more silk and fewer chains. Not none. Fewer. History is fragile. It turns on rooms where a breath is held too long or let out too fast. On the Ides of March, a small room in Rome tried to kill the future. In one version of the story, it succeeds. In another, the blades slip, and the room learns that futures sometimes fight back. And maybe that's the point. When we look at the world we inherited, we see the fingerprints of men and women who survived their Ides, a sickness, a scandal, a sudden storm, and kept moving. Caesar had one more move in him. If he'd lived, the map we know might look the same at a glance. Same coasts, same mountains, but the threads between cities would pull in different directions, east to west, stage to street, crown to crowd. A world rewritten not by a new country but by a different conversation about power and belonging. What if Julius Caesar survived the Ides of March? In his shadow, the empire learns to perform unity so well that it almost becomes true. That is the alternate Rome, louder, brighter, and, perhaps for longer, whole.